Look, I'll throw it out there. What is my number one thing that I'm looking at in this football game? Just right off the top, the Texas secondary and defense in general is largely untested, Mason. And I think that UGA has got an edge in this area in this football game. Um, let me kind of explain my thought process here, and we'll kind of go through each team real quick and just kind of explain our thoughts here. Uh, Texas, we'll start with the Texas side of things. Quinn Ewers, Arch Manning have been really good. Quinn's coming off of the injury, looked a little rusty to start that Oklahoma game. I mean, just a couple of throws there at the beginning, but Texas settled in nicely, did their thing against Oklahoma, just like they've done all season. We're going to kind of go through some of the games that Texas has played this season here in just a minute, but Quinn Ewers has been really good, and like I said, when Arch Manning has had to step up, he's been able to do that as well, and been pretty impressive for the most part. Offense and defense on this team has done everything that they've been asked to do, that they're supposed to do. There's not one thing so far this season that you can point to with Texas and say, this is a big area of concern. Not statistically. I mean, they've just absolutely bludgeoned everybody that they've played. No doubt about it, offensively and defensively. And you can see some of the stats there on your screen. Those are some of the offensive stats there for Texas this season. Um, Look, we in the preseason we talked about the lack of depth in the running back room. I think for all intents and purposes, I think Texas has done a pretty good job. Mending fences there and figuring out a way to manufacture yards on the ground. They've done a better job than Georgia has this season for sure. 189 yards per game. I thought that the rush game for Texas would be a significant area of concern going into the season. And so far, so good, I would say, for the most part. There was a game or two that you can point to where it seemed like Texas was maybe trying to get their feet, get their footing. But this offensive line is really good, uh, especially from center all the way over to that left side. I feel really good about all three of those guys. Just a really, really good group. Haven't allowed a lot of sacks this season. Just like I said, there's not much that you can pick on. Wide receivers been good. Texas went into the transfer portal in the offseason, got some wide receivers after some really talented guys had left for the NFL and some, I guess, in the transfer portal as well. But I think that the skill players for Texas are really cream of the crop. There's no doubt about that. They're very, very, very good, and the statistics certainly show that. Um, Defensively, again, this team's done everything that you could ask. Pete Kwiatkowski has been really, really good. Former Boise State player, guy that's really kind of bounced around out there on the West Coast. Made his way kind of Midland America there in Texas, and has found a nice little home for himself, and has built a nice little defense. And this has been the most drastic improvement, I think, for Texas over the last couple of years is the defense. And again, nothing to pick on at this point. All the numbers are really, really good. I mean, you see them right there. You're hard pressed to find any numbers outside of the top 20. You know, uh, Rushing yards. That's about it. And that's 23rd. I mean, that's nitpicking. But here's the deal, man. This is where my whole logic of this whole thing comes into play. As you can see on your screen, the opponents there on the left side of that slide, that's the opponents that Texas has played so far this season. And I mean, just take a look at the total offensive rankings for these teams. You can see the individual rankings for passing yards, rushing yards per game, total offense. And then to the right there, you see total defense. And again, passing or rushing. I mean, it's just putrid. It is absolutely putrid. And that's not Texas's fault. Okay. I just want to throw that out there. That's not Texas's fault. I'm not saying that, how dare Texas not play anybody? I mean, they don't have any control of the fact that Michigan blew their whole team up from last year, lost all their coaches. They don't have control that, Mississippi State is a dumpster fire. They don't have control that Oklahoma, can't get a first down. That's not Texas's fault. And so I just want to be clear in the fact that I think that Texas's defense is probably pretty damn good. I don't think it's bad. But I also don't fully know. I haven't seen it. I still need to see it. The numbers so far this year look better than last year. But uh, no offenses in the top 50 in the nation. UTSA is, I guess, the best team that Texas has played this season. I mean, let's look at Michigan. I mean, look at their total defense. It's 44th. Now, they've got the second best rushing defense, but 106th best passing defense. Now, look, that surprised me. I would have thought that Michigan's pass defense would have been, you know, a lot better off than that this season. And I think a lot of people thought that, but that's Michigan in general. They've just been an absolute dumpster fire this season. They don't believe in the forward pass anymore on offense, and defensively, I think they just lost too many guys. Pretty good on the defensive line, and that's about it for Michigan. Honestly, for their whole team. So, with all that being said, I think that Georgia really stands a good chance in this football game, Mason. And look, I'll be frank with you, and I'll hand over the floor to you. But let me just be clear: a lot more things have to go right for Georgia in this football game for Georgia to be able to win it than for Texas. I think the route to victory is a little more simple for Texas, I guess is the right way to put it. But with that being said, this Georgia offense is very explosive, and while they have been inconsistent, we have noted on this show time and time again the fact that Georgia plays a good half of football every game. It's literally every single game they play one half of good football. And like this past weekend, we saw the defense. It was the defense's turn, I guess, to take a half off, and they took the second half off there against Mississippi State. Now, Carson Beck kind of fueled that fire by throwing an interception, and I'll kind of talk about Carson Beck here for just a second. But these skill players for Georgia are really something serious, and I don't think us as Georgia fans, and I'll tell you guys, I'm a Georgia fan, and I try to call it straight down the line. I try not to be biased. Look, I picked Alabama to beat Georgia when we did a breakdown on this show. A couple few weeks ago or whatnot. Um, but Georgia's skill players are really good, specifically at wide receiver. They've been really good down the field this season. I don't think Georgia fans really know how to gauge this offense. And I've heard Georgia fans and fans of other teams saying that, Mike Bobo's trash and blah, blah, blah. I don't know. These numbers say differently. Now, Georgia hasn't been able to run the ball like normal. And that's kind of what I mean. This is a different looking offense. If you go back and you look at the Mississippi State game, Georgia threw the ball over 50 times in that football game. And really, ever since the second half of the Alabama game, it seems like Georgia has decided that they are a passing football team and they have accepted the identity. And honestly, that's kind of what I've come away from that game feeling like. Like Georgia did find an identity in the second half of that Alabama game. And I'm kind of going off the feeling that I think that they did. And these wide receivers, some of them have had kind of a learning curve this season. Arian Smith, the one that comes to mind, really, a guy that in his career has kind of just came in and ran a go route, once every 15 plays his whole career. And now all of a sudden, here in his senior year, he's being asked to be an every single down wide receiver. And there was a learning curve early in the season. And I think that Georgia's offense has gotten a little bit better. I think it's been kind of hard to see at certain times because of the fact that Carson Beck's been turning the ball over in the red zone a good bit here lately. I mean, obviously the Alabama football game he did, but honestly, Carson Beck throwing an interception in the Mississippi State game there in the second half, as Georgia's about to go in and make it a 17 or 24-point lead or whatever, he throws that interception. Mississippi State hits a big play, and bam, it's like a 10-point game all of a sudden, and it was a big turnaround. So Carson has done a really good job getting the ball down the field. He, I think, has built some pretty good continuity with these wide receivers. Lawson Lucky seems to be kind of emerging a little bit at tight end. I think kind of over Oscar Delt. Um, if Carson Beck can come out here and play mistake-free football, or really, honestly, I feel like just like one interception or none, one or less, I think would be acceptable. When you throw the ball 50 times, you're going to throw some interceptions. I mean, that's just laws of averages there. But um, he can't come out and throw 3 interceptions. Georgia can't come out and not show up in the first half and get down 28 to nothing or whatever against Texas, because you won't be able to come back. Not against Texas's offense. I mean, coming back against Alabama in the second half is one thing. I don't think Alabama's offense is as good as what maybe we thought it could have been in the preseason. It's still kind of yet to be determined in some aspects, but I, I like I like Georgia in this spot right here, Mason. I really do. I like Georgia in an underdog spot here. I think Kirby, somebody commented, I think it was one of our resident Texas fans commented and said something about what I said on the early preview this week about I like Georgia being an underdog. And he's like, man, Georgia ain't been an underdog since, in reality, it was 2021 was the last time Georgia's been an underdog. Um, but I've been a Georgia fan a lot longer than since 2021. So I remember when Kirby Smart came around and we were underdogs. And that's I felt like whenever Kirby got his best play out of his guys, and I think Kirby's going to be able to rally this team. I think they get a little bit healthier on defense here. It seems like I felt like those were some one-on-one mismatch blow up coverages against Mississippi State. The defense played really good in the first half and then just gave up a couple of big plays. I don't know how much Georgia was paying attention there in the second half. Kind of fell asleep at the wheel. Um, but I think Georgia's defense is going to be able to do enough in this football game. A turnover sure would be handy. Georgia has not been good at getting turnovers this season. I think this would be a great place to start getting a turnover. Texas has been good at protecting the football, so we'll see. You see some of the defensive numbers there. Georgia has been a little more susceptible on the edges this season defensively, and we've seen at moments the secondary kind of fall asleep at the wheel a little bit, which is surprising because we felt like that was the strength of this defense. So, with all that being said, man, I think the dogs can get this one done. I think Vegas is setting a pretty good trap for everybody. I haven't heard anybody talking about taking Georgia plus the points here. Um, I, I saw where Vegas is giving even money on Georgia plus the points in this football game, and I think that's Vegas's attempt to give a bigger payout to somebody that will take the plus the points in an effort to not have to move the line. Because I think Vegas is about to clean up on this one, man. Because everybody and their grandmama's throwing money on Texas. I think this is a snap back to reality. Oh, there goes gravity moment for betters and casual betters in college football. So give me the dogs plus the points. I don't know that I'll actually bet it with my money. I typically don't bet my personal money on Georgia games, but I like the over in this football game as well. All right, Mason. All that being said, what do you think? I tried to get on through that the best I could.
Man, are you fired up for this game or what?
Dude, I am so fired up. I'm telling you what, I've got a feeling about this one, brother. This is going to be
Yeah.
a football game.
That was a 15-minute rant. I don't think I saw you blink or take a breath.
I will say this last thing. I don't think there's any way, and I'm just talking possible outcomes in this football game. I think there's a chance that Texas can run away with this football game. I'm just going to throw that out there. Eh, you know, I don't think there's any chance in hell Georgia comes out and routs Texas. I don't see a path where that's possible. I do see a path where it's possible for Texas to get up big in the first half because we've seen Georgia lay down in the first half a couple of times. So, with that being said, it wouldn't surprise me to see Texas win this football game, but I just think this sets up so perfect for the dogs.
Yeah, I kind of have it going the other way in a lot of ways, but specifically, you mentioned you thought that Georgia could come out slow. Um, I kind of feel like Texas might might struggle a little bit at first, and I don't think it'll be like a 28-0 type of game, where like what we saw with Georgia and Alabama. But when you look at, and you brought up the slide a few minutes ago, when you look at who Texas has played offensively, I think the defense could be a little bit shell shocked by this Georgia offense. So I could see Georgia coming out and probably wanting the ball first and starting off really hot. Um, and then I could see Texas kind of making a comeback, scratching away at it, and making it a ball game. Who knows? Who knows how it's going to start? But I do know one thing that you said that I completely agree with is the fact that, and I don't think Georgia just has no shot at winning this game. I absolutely feel like this is going to be a bar fight. But I feel like the window is so narrow for Georgia to win this game that I struggle to pick them to win the game. Um, as a Georgia fan, of course, I want to hear everything about how they're going to win the game, but I don't know that I can look at what I've seen from Georgia. Put Texas aside for a second. I don't know if I can take what I've seen from Georgia and think, okay, yeah, that's the team I'm going to put my money on in this week and in this matchup. I feel like the struggles, on the offensive side of the football, just in general, have been a little bit too much to overcome at this point. When you look at every unit on Georgia's offense, I feel like they're average to slightly above average, but not S tier, not elite. There's nothing I feel just incredible about as a Georgia fan on the offensive side of the football. And then on the defensive side of the football, I could say the exact same thing. You look at the defensive line for Georgia; they've struggled to contain the edge. Teams haven't run up the middle as much on Georgia. I think that's more of just a respect factor for the Georgia defense for them not to run up the middle. I don't know that that's a smart play just in general. They got gashed against Mississippi State was coming off a bye week. They kind of gave Georgia some different looks than they had seen or had put on film to that point. But when I look at the Georgia defensive line has been average. Really, the linebacker play, like if you really go back and look at it, I know they got dudes, but they haven't been great. That's supposed to be like the best unit on the defense. They haven't played great. Smile Munden's out. That's a huge loss for Georgia. I think it's a bigger loss than I ever expected it to be. But him not playing is a huge loss. They desperately need him in this game with what Sarkisian likes to dial up. And then on the back end of the defense, I think they've got playmakers, but they're very inexperienced. And that's, that's what that to me, that's the biggest deficiency on the defensive side of the football. I'll say that. Now, talking about some personnel groupings, it sounds like Jordan Hall is back and he's going to play in this game. That's a defensive tackle, former 5-star, true sophomore, hasn't played a game so far this season, broke his leg in the offseason. He's back. He was dressed out for the Mississippi State game, but did not play for obvious reasons. It sounds like Jordan Hall is going to be back. I think he could be a factor in this football game in the middle of that defensive line. And then on the back end of the defense, we saw last week with the issues Georgia was having in the secondary, we saw Ellis Robinson, the number 2 player in the country last year behind Jeremiah Smith, true freshman. We saw him get some playing time, and Kirby was asked about that, and he said, "Yeah, Ellis Robinson's been playing really well at practice the past couple of weeks." Do we see him in this game a little bit more? Is he sort of an X factor for the back end of this defense? I think that if Georgia's getting gashed on the back end, we do see that. But if not, there's no sense in playing a true freshman. We know Tate Ratledge is out on the offensive line. It sounds like Jared Wilson is back. He too was stressed out for the Mississippi State game, but did not play. It seems like he's going to be a go. Georgia loses Branson Robinson at running back, but I think Trevor Etienne is emerging as a star, as well as Nate Frazier. I think that he's emerging. Not sure how much Georgia's going to run the ball moving forward. It does seem like they've captured this identity of a finesse team and a finesse offense that really just wants to air the ball out. And it looks like Georgia's ready for a shootout, is what it looks like this week. I think that they have prepared themselves for this game and for a shootout with Texas. I really think this is going to be a higher scoring game. Um, and, going back to Georgia being a finesse team, isn't it odd that it seems like Texas and Georgia have sort of flipped as programs where suddenly Texas is the more physical brand of football that can run the ball pretty well and obviously pass the ball, but plays a more balanced offense just in general. And then Georgia, I mean, they tried to do it. They tried to play the Georgia way, the Mike Bobo offense, and things weren't working. So, but I give Kirby and the coaching staff credit for transitioning with what they have on the football field. But the offense to me has been slightly above average. I think they have played better the past few weeks. You can really cite the Auburn game, which is a game that really flew under the radar. Georgia beats Auburn. What was it, 31-13 or something like that?
Right.
But scored 31 points on an Auburn defense that hasn't been giving up a ton. I mean, they really haven't. You go back and look. I think the next highest scoring team against Auburn was like 24 points or something like that. So, the offense for Georgia was really clicking in that game. And I do feel like they've been playing better football as time has come on. I just going back to what I said, as a better, as a objective as I can be college football fan, I just think that the window for Georgia is about that big for them to win this game. Everything has to be perfect. It has to be a shootout. I think if Georgia comes out and if you tell me that the final score of the game is in the 50s, I feel like Georgia probably loses this game. I think it needs to be a shootout for Georgia to win, and boy, that's how the tables have turned there, because it just seems like yesterday we were talking about how if it's a lower scoring game, Georgia's probably going to win it 9 times out of 10, and so. But to me, I can't bet on Georgia to win this game. I think it is close. If the point's at 3.5, I like Georgia to cover that. I think this is a 3-point game at most on either side. Georgia obviously has a path to victory. I can't pick against Texas right now, even given their schedule and how weak it's been. But I do see where you're coming from, and picking Georgia in this game. I'm staying away from it. I'm just gonna watch it as a bystander, and root for Georgia, obviously. But I think that Texas is really, really good. And this could be a game where they prove that they are the elite team in football, the standalone elite team in football potentially. And this will be another stepping stone for them. And then you look at Georgia. I mean, they lose this game, and there goes your mulligan. You already used one of them. You get 2 a season now. You already used one of them. You don't have to win out. If you're trying to make the playoffs at that point, and with this schedule, that's going to be a really tall task for the Dogs. Score prediction, I'm going to say 34-31. Texas ends up winning by 3 points at the end of the game. I do think that it'll come down to the last play of the game, the last drive of the game, something to that effect. I think that this is going to be a very close ball game. I feel like Carson Beck probably turns the ball over. He's had like 5 turnovers in the last 3 games, has not protected the football very well. And that could be the difference here as Georgia is trying to push the ball downfield, open the play up, open the field up a lot. Carson tends to make more mistakes whenever they do that. And that could be the deciding factor in this football game to me.
Yeah, Texas fans, hit the subscribe button. Come and hang out with us on the First and Long College Football Show. We'd love to have you. Welcome to the SEC. This is going to be a great football game. I think Texas has got a really good team that is going to the college football playoff no matter what happens, I think, in this football game. And something that I can't really say for Georgia, as Mason just stated there. So Texas has got one hell of a team here, and I think this is going to be one hell of a game. Thank you so much for watching.